So where we left off in this mimer was a discussion on the difference between dreaming and waking states. That whether we're dreaming or we're awake, all of our functions, all of our capacities, all of our inner abilities are happening. They're working. That when you're asleep, you can have a dream, and in that dream your intellect is functioning. You might come up with a great idea in your dream, better than when you're awake. You experience emotions in a dream. You can have yearnings and ambitions and dreams in a dream that you want to come true. All of your functions are working, are happening. So as far as your experience of things, we understand that you're not awake, so the things aren't happening in the concrete physical world. But as far as your experience of them, whether your mind is working because you saw something with your eyes, or your mind is working because you saw something in a dream, what's the difference? It's still your mind working and experiencing something. So as far as you are concerned, how are you different when you're awake or when you're asleep? This, the Rabbi is going to explain based on a mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So we're on page Reish Samach Vav, in the middle of Ois Beis, just over halfway down the paragraph after the brackets. So the line starts with the word demachet, or demachta, and in the middle of that line, after the brackets, v'hachiluk. V'hachiluk shebein er liyoshen, the difference between a waking person and a sleeping person is the be'ez shu er, when you're awake, kol inyan of him ba'ifin masudar. Your functions work in an orderly fashion. Your life might not work in an orderly fashion, but your functions, each one has its place, and it does its thing. And so certainly when you're awake and your mind is working in its orderly fashion, your inner functions, each one is doing its specific thing, so then certainly it's not possible for two opposite things to come together at once and to be joined together, or even follow one after the other. In other words, in our awakened reality, our logical mind organizes things, and things happen in a process. They happen in an orderly fashion. Whereas in a dream, our mind doesn't work in that orderly way, and so things can make no sense, and they come together. In the world of dreams, it makes sense, but it doesn't really make sense. Opposites can come together, and things are all over the place. And you're fine with it. If in your waking moment things were contradictory, you'd have a problem with it. You say, "What's going on?" Whereas in your sleep, in your dream, it's not a problem. That's just how it is. It's fine. So what this also means is that in a dream, what is rational and what is emotional get mixed together. Your feelings towards a person in a dream will affect the way that person looks in your dream. Your emotions will impact your vision of the person. How you feel about something will be depicted in a dream in the way it looks. That doesn't happen in waking moments. That the way somebody looks is the way they look. The way you feel about them is the way you feel about them. They're two different things. It's their physical appearance, and then there's your emotional response to them. They have two different places. Whereas in a dream, they get converged, they mix together, and so your feelings become projected into the visuals of what you see. And that's fine in a dream. They can all get mixed up. When all of your faculties are working in an orderly fashion, then you can recognize the difference between them and why one is above another. So the supremacy of intellect over emotion, when you're awake, that can work, that you can be rational. That even though I may feel this way, but your logic, your rational mind can come and override your feelings or direct you in a different way. It can calm you down, or it can bring perspective. That's how it works when we're awake. In our sleeping state, we can't do that. We don't have perspective. We don't have that level of self-control where our mind rules over the heart and we rationalize things. The hierarchy is lost in the dreaming state, where the mind can rule over the heart. We don't have that control. The heart and the mind just intermingle, and so therefore our rational thinking doesn't overtake as it does while we're awake. When we're asleep, in the midst of a dream, two exact opposite powers and faculties could come together as one. The highest power with the lowest power could become one. To the point where the various powers intermingle in a totally chaotic fashion. So your feelings with your intellect, with what you're looking at, with what you're hearing, they all come together as one into a big mishmash in a dream. And certainly you cannot recognize and identify the supremacy of the higher powers over the lower powers in a dream. There's no hierarchy, there's no system, it's all over the place. So we got into this topic of understanding the difference between being awake and being asleep in the human experience, in order to understand what it means when Chazal say that Hashem was asleep in Golus, when we're in Golus. He made himself into a sleeping state, and then he woke up. His sleep was disturbed. What is this anthropomorphic human terms? What does it mean in describing Hashem? What was it actually talking about? So we've now explained that when you're asleep or when you're awake, all of you are there, all of your functions are there, and they're all working. The difference is, when you're asleep, your functions are disorderly, are chaotic, overlap each other. You can't tell the difference between one and the other. There's no hierarchy. Whereas when you're awake, you work systematically. There's your feelings and there's your intellect. There's what you see and there's what you interpret. They're all in their place. So how does that work in Hashem's sleep, metaphorical sleep? That the Rabbi now explained. So this metaphor can now be applied to the upper realms, to the divine realm. Sleep, when Hashem is sleeping, what it means is that which is high is not recognized as being high. The advantage of something is not recognized. The hierarchy falls apart. This is why Golus is described as Hashem sleeping. Like we mentioned earlier, that when we're in Golus, Hashem is, as it were, asleep. Because what's Golus? Golus is when the Jewish people's strength and power and uniqueness is not visible. We're not where we belong. Golus means we're misplaced from where we're supposed to be. And the greatness of the Jewish people has been lost. It's not visible. You can't see it. Unlike when we're in our home, in Eretz Yisrael, when there's a Beis HaMikdash and there's a divine revelation, Elokus is revealed. So then you can see the Jewish people have this special divine connection. And through us, all the nations of the world are blessed. But when we're in Golus, when we're in exile, we don't have that Gilui Elokus happening. Not only that, but we're downtrodden and we're beneath other nations. So then the greatness of the Jewish people is just not visible. We're not where we're supposed to be. The Jewish people are children of Hashem. As it says, you are children of Hashem in the Pasuk. And in the very least, we're His servants. as it says, that even if we're not doing the right thing, banim is when we're on a higher level, but avadim, or at least his servants, kavaimer im kavadim, like we say in Rosh Hashanah, that we come before you either like children or like servants, but one of the two, well, either your children or your servants. Shegam eved melech v'melech, and even a servant of a king is also a king. Lo rak kamelech v'kavadim el melech, not just like a king, but a king. The servant of a king is the king, because the servant is an extension of his master. So if you're a servant of Hashem, you're an extension of him. So whether we're children or we're servants, but the Jewish people, our identity, our very being is a revelation of Hashem in the world. This is what we are. And this is what explains our unique part in history, and why we're different to all other nations, and our history is different to all other nations, and we're treated different to all other nations, because we are the representation of Hashem in the world. That's what our real identity is. So if you're children, where do children belong? At the parents' table. And servants belong at the table of their master. So where do we belong? We belong in Eretz Yisrael. We belong in the Beis Hamikdash with the revelation of Hashem, with the closeness obvious in our position obvious in the world. It should be revealed. This is where we should be. And the reason why we have been exiled from our father's table and from our master's table is because sleep. The world is in a sleeping state. We fell asleep. Hashem fell asleep. It's like as if Hashem himself kaviyachal doesn't see the difference. He's not treating us any different to anyone else. Our uniqueness is not being displayed. And this is what Golus comes from. So, applying what we said earlier, that Hashem falls asleep when we fall asleep. If the Jewish people fall asleep, then that causes Hashem to fall asleep. So what does it mean to fall asleep? It means not to recognize the mile of one thing over the other. If we see ourselves as just like anybody else, if the Jewish nation is just like any other nation, that's not recognizing our unique power and our unique responsibility in the world. So then Hashem says, okay, so if you fall asleep, I fall asleep. And then your place in the world is lost. You don't have this unique place in the world. This is what caused the Golus. This is what Golus is. And that's what happens when you're asleep. There's no hierarchy. That which is above is not above, and that which is below is not below. Everything's mixed together.
So when Hashem's sleep is disturbed, wouldn't that be Geula?
Yeah.
But does that happen within Golus as well?
Well, that's what Purim is. That there was a Geula in Golus. And that's the Chiddush, not the Shnas HaMelech. That's what we said last week, that's breaking Hashem's rules. This is Golus time, and yet within Golus there was an awakening, a revelation.
But if people are like doing the right thing, then shouldn't Hashem be awake?
Yeah. That's Geula.
So Hashem's awakening still came because of the Yidden's doing Teshuvah.
Yeah.
So then that should still be the main part when it is that the Yidden.
But it's still, the tshuva was in a context of Golus. Like we're still in Golus, and yet Hashem woke up in that time. So that our tshuva was enough to wake up Hashem. That's still breaking the rules of the divine. But Golus is still happening. Golus hasn't ended yet. So you haven't done that level of tshuva, and yet Hashem is going to wake up and reveal Himself. Okay, so going further into this idea of the Shina Lamayla, Hashem sleeping, and the effect, the impact that has on the world. So we said that just like when a person's asleep, the various faculties are not in their hierarchy, so too, when Hashem is asleep, so the greatness of the Jewish people is not recognized. But there's a further point in that. That's in Gimel. The Friedrich Rebbe in his Maimer continues and says, the idea that when you're asleep, the powers, the faculties, you can't see the hierarchy, you can't see one above the other. Intellect does not direct emotion, but it all gets mixed together. How does that happen? Where does that come from? How is it even possible? How is it possible for intellect and emotion to mix up, to get mixed up? They're two different powers. We understand that emotion can take over intellect. Intellect can take over emotion. Emotion can be influenced by intellect, or it can influence intellect. That we understand. But for them to actually meld into one, to the point where they're indistinguishable, how's that even possible to happen? How do we do that? That we're in a sleeping state. So now, all the boundaries fall down. That logic does not dictate how things have to happen. Emotion can mix in. So it can make total sense to us in the dream that our feelings are being displayed by the images in our dream. And it all makes sense. That logic and emotion just mix together. How is it even possible for us to reach that level? To experience that?
It must be like in their source that we're in one.
So that's what the Rabbi says. That the fact that in sleep you don't see the difference between the various powers is because you're experiencing your powers and your faculties as they are klulim be'etzem nefesh, as they are in the essence of the soul, where they're all included as one. All our various powers that the Rebbe is going to explain come from our soul. Our soul has the power of intellect. It has the power of vision. It has the power of emotion. It has the power of feeling and touching. It has ratzon and tainug, will, pleasure, all of the various faculties, they all come from the soul. However, in the soul itself, the soul is not compartmentalized into different faculties. The soul is simple life, energy, being. When the soul enters into the body, so the various faculties differentiate by being expressed in different parts of the body. So our brain thinks, our feet walk, our heart feels, our eyes see. What is that? It's our soul expressing its power of seeing in the eyes and walking in the feet and thinking in the brain. It's the powers of the soul as they express through the tools that the body provides. The eye doesn't see. It's the soul that sees, utilizing the eye to see the physical world. If a body doesn't have a soul, it still has eyes, but it can't see. Because it's the soul that allows us to see. But the soul doesn't have sight as a part of it. There's not a bit of the soul you could point to and say, there's sight, and there's intellect, and there's emotion. The soul is just life, energy. But in potential, in the soul, there's undifferentiated faculties and powers. All of those powers of sight and hearing and thinking and feeling and wanting and touching and walking. They're all in the soul in an undifferentiated state. So when we go into a dream state, those faculties are being experienced similar to the way they are in their essence, in the essence of the soul, where they're all one, they're all a conglomerate, they're mixed. So it's similar to like a supersensory experience with the senses, but it being all mixed together as they are in the source. Because in the source, all the faculties are equal. There's not a hierarchy up and down. It's all just soul energy. As they're expressed, intellect is higher than emotion. But in their source, it's all just soul energy. And the ability for intellect and the ability of emotion is just soul. Undifferentiated soul.
So where does it become differentiated? like within the vessels that it's expressed, or even before there's a place that's already, it's starting to differentiate?
Well, only when the soul is in the body are those powers differentiated out. So the body, the light of the soul fills all the body. But it's not as if there's one part of the soul that goes to your brain and a different part of the soul that goes to your feet. It's not. It's just your soul enters your body. But that soul, as it is expressed in your brain, is thinking, and in your eyes is seeing, and in your feet is walking.
So if someone has like a disability, it's only in the expression of it, but in the soul they have that ability.
Correct.
So that's
So-
why when you're dreaming, you can still see, or even if like you can have all those faculties, you're not using your faculties to express it. It's just all.
So in the dream state, you're not using your body to think and see and experience. Your eyes are closed and you're seeing. Because the faculties that you're using are not the faculties as they are expressed in the body, but the faculties as they are in the soul itself.
Is that why you can do certain things that you can't really do?
Like flying.
Yeah,
thinking.
like that's what I'm thinking as
Well,
well.
you can fly because our soul has the power to fly.
Yeah,
We just don't have wings.
yeah, that our ability to move in our body is limited to walking. But the soul doesn't have that limitation.
Or you could be in a few places at once in a dream.
Yeah, because what you're experiencing there is what the soul can do. So just like now when you're awake, you can also be in many places at once. We do that all the time. The only difference is we realize, okay, I'm here. Eventually we realize that, okay, I'm actually not there, I'm here. Whereas in a sleeping state, you don't have to make that realization. You can be here and there. Or I can switch back and forth from being here and there. Because the orderliness of the logical world, of the physical limitations, is not there. So my soul's ability to be anywhere, like the Baal Shem Tov says, that the place where your thoughts are, that's where you really are. Regardless of where you're sitting, where your thoughts are, that's where you really are. In your sleeping state, that's visually possible, to be anywhere where your thoughts take you. In the waking state, your thoughts take you there, but your body's stuck here. So that the Rabbi here says is because in your sleeping state, you're entering into the soul reality as it is in its source, where all your faculties and functions are actually one. They're united as soul powers. They're not differentiated. So therefore there's no hierarchy and there's no division. They intermingle.
So does that give you a bit of a glimpse of what a soul is like without the limitations of the body, or like to try and understand the soul powers?
Yeah, it does. Which is why we also can bump into souls in a dream. We're in their realm. We're in the realm of the souls. So the Rebbe explains this a bit further. Behind the third line. The idea of the elevation of the faculties of the soul at the time of sleeping, that it's the hisalmus means the concealment of the powers. The fact that the faculties, when you're in a sleeping state, become in a concealed way, meaning you go into your source, into a higher realm where your faculties are all united as one. The etzem nefesh. Meaning that when you're asleep, something leaves you when you're asleep. Like you're not present. To the outside world, you're not present. You fell asleep. So if you're sitting having a conversation with somebody and they fell asleep in the middle of the conversation, they left the conversation. They no longer respond. They don't hear what you said. They're not with you anymore. But where do they go? Their body is still sitting there, but they went into their etzem nefesh, their faculties. They're having a different conversation now. Maybe not with you, or maybe with you, but it's in the etzem nefesh. They've elevated, lifted up. Their soul has gone up into the inner reality. This is what sleep does. The idea of sleep is that the soul faculties that are being externally spent during our waking hours, we get tired from that, from expending our energy outwards. So when we sleep, that energy is brought back inwards, back into its source. So rather than being expended outwards, it's plugged in back into its source, which is why sleep is rejuvenating. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense. Why should sleep rejuvenate you? Why should you feel rested after a sleep? All you've done is stop doing. But stopping to do something doesn't make more energy. Maybe you're not expending energy, but why would you be rejuvenated? You should go back to where you left off when you wake up. If I've used 80% of my energy and I sleep, when I wake up, I've still used 80% of my energy. Why should I be refreshed to have new energy? Because sleeping is not just stopping, it's that your soul energies are going back into their source, where they can be replenished. When you're expending energy, it's going outward, so that exhausts you, that drains you. When you sleep, you're not just stopping to do that, but you're going back into your source. So your intellect and your emotion and your ability to walk and your ability to look, all of those faculties are going back into their source, where they're infinite, where there's a well of energy, of abilities. And in that state, they're all mixed together. There's not thinking over here and feeling over there and seeing and walking. It's just soul.
Can I ask a question, but maybe it's not relevant at all? So then, what is imagination, according to Haskins?
Imagination is one of our intellectual faculties. Ability to create a picture in our mind. But when you're awake and you're imagining, your logical mind is still somewhat functioning. So even though you can imagine something illogical or fantastic, but you know you're not there. And your imagination can only take you so far when you're awake. It can take you much further when you're asleep, because it's not bound by the logical mind. So now the Rebbe has added another layer to our understanding of dreaming and sleeping, that it is actually a lift to a higher place. You're going to somewhere higher. Your soul energies are going into their source, which is a higher place than the external expression of those energies. The etzem nefesh, the soul itself, is higher than the soul as it expresses through the body. It's the source. So my intellect when I'm awake, where is it? It's being expressed down in my physical brain as a specific, defined faculty, the faculty of intellect. When I'm asleep, where's my faculty of intellect? It's gone higher than my brain, than the limitations of my brain. It's gone back into the etzem nefesh, its source, where it is not a distinct faculty called intellect, but it is a part of the etzem nefesh, part of the bigger picture of my soul, which includes emotion and includes action and includes seeing and hearing and smelling. All of my faculties are one there. So it's in a higher form in my sleeping state than in my waking state. Higher because it's in the etzem nefesh. What it's lost is its distinct identity. It's not distinct from the other faculties. So my intellect, when I'm awake, my intellect is higher than my faculty of emotion. It can direct my emotion. When I'm asleep, it can't do that. Even though it's in a higher state, but it's mixed in with emotion now. It's all one with emotion. It's not distinct. So am I better off to be asleep or awake? Depends when you ask the question, I guess.
So it would seem like Gullus is a bit of a recharge.
So let's see what does that mean. We've now redefined what sleep is. So how does that translate? How does this translate? So if this is true about the mashal, about the metaphor, which is sleep, the human sleep, so then what about the divine sleep? The fact that in Golus, what is Golus? Golus is a concealment. The divine light is concealed. The Beis HaMikdash is not there. Hashem's light is not shining in the world in a revealed way. Hashem is asleep, we said. What does that actually mean? What is happening in Golus? It doesn't mean the revelations have stopped. It means the revelations have gone up into their source. The divine revelation that was down here is now in its source. It hasn't gone, meaning disappeared, hasn't ceased to exist. It's gone back to its source. Va'ad la'atzmas, all the way to the essence of Hashem. So Golus Shina, Hashem sleeping, what does it mean? It doesn't mean that Hashem is not there anymore. It means that His revelation is there, but where? It's gone up to its source. Which for us means concealment, but in actual fact, what's going on is even higher than revelation. So when the person fell asleep in the middle of your conversation, for you, they've left the conversation. For them, they're having an even higher conversation right in front of you. But that leaves you left out. Like the Zohar says on the pasuk Kianenu, that there's a pasuk that denotes that Hashem has gone, Kianenu, He is no longer. The Kuchabrichu Salik La'ela. What does that mean? The Zohar says that Hashem has gone up above. Sha'alalim Kaimai, He's gone back to His place, to His abode, one room within another room, meaning He's withdrawn into His chambers. Which again, on the surface means He's left. But where is He gone? He's gone into Himself. What this means is the concealment of Golus is only from our perspective. We down here in the world of physicality, the world of Giluyim, where revelation matters, well, we lost the revelation. That Hashem's light has gone back up above, and it's not down here. We're not getting it. Which translates into Golus. That's what Golus means, a time of darkness, of divine concealment. That's what we are experiencing. But only we are experiencing it that way. But as far as the light itself, Hashem's light, on the contrary, in Golus, it's in its higher state, in a higher level. It's in its source. Just like human sleep, when a person is asleep, the body of that person is not experiencing the faculties that person has. The body is silent now, is off duty. That the light of the soul leaves the body in sleep. Not the soul completely, the person's still alive, but the light of the soul, the revelation of the soul, is not being expressed through the body. You're not seeing with your eyes and thinking with your brain and feeling with your heart and walking with your feet. All of those faculties and powers have left the body behind. The body is lifeless to a great extent. But what's that soul experiencing in the time of sleep? On the contrary. The soul, dafka when you're asleep, gets to go up to its source and to rejuvenate its light, its life, its energy. So, for the body, is sleep good news?
Well, yes and no.
It's not getting the revelation, expression of the soul, but my soul is getting re-energized, rejuvenated at this moment. So it's a good thing. Even though the body's not feeling anything. The pleasure of sleep is not in the body. The pleasure of sleep is the soul in its source.
Don't we say that Hashem doesn't sleep?
We quoted that before.
Yeah.
When we're awake, then Hashem doesn't sleep. But when we're asleep,
The idea of
Says
Hashem
Lama
sleeping,
Sishan.
rejuvenating, like, it just doesn't seem like a godly...
Got nothing to leave.
Yeah, like we need to sleep, but like Hashem doesn't need to rejuvenate. Or...
No, the world needs an added light of Hashem. If we're not zoich, if we're not meriting to that light, it goes up, but it's in order to come down even higher.
So saying that Hashem doesn't sleep is only when it's a reflection of us that we're not asleep.
Yeah, we said before in the Yalkut it says, when the Jewish people sin, he makes himself like he's asleep. And when we do his will, he doesn't sleep or slumber or sleep. It says, wake up, don't, why are you sleeping? We say to Hashem, but that's because we're asleep. So suddenly we've got a very different view of what the siluk, the removal of the divine light, which Golus is defined by. We've got a very different understanding of what that is. That is like sleep, where that's a siluk, that's the departure of the soul from the body. But why is that happening? Because the soul is gone to its source. All the faculties of the soul have gone up to their source. So they're in a higher state right now. So to Golus is when the divine light, it's still there, but just not down here in a revealed place. Down here, it's gone back to its source. So it is in a higher state. The light is there, but in a higher state. How does that help us? We're down here. So for us, it's Golus. Well, first of all, to realize just for us, it's Golus. But the reality is, it's not that the light has disappeared. It's in its source. That already takes a bit of an edge off the Golus. That even though for us there is a siluk, there is a departure, but it's not really a departure because Hashem's essence is everywhere, including here, and Hashem's light is in His essence. But we're not getting that revelation. We're not seeing it. So the Rebbe explains, what does this mean? The explanation of this, that Golus is when the light's in a higher state. The Hishtalshlus, the divine evolution of worlds, the way Hashem created existence, by stage and stage, level and level, higher and higher to lower and lower. That whole system that Hashem created the world through and with is similar to the way a person's soul expresses itself in a body. That if we see Hashem as being the essence of everything and the world as being the external reality that He created, similar to the soul being the essence of a person and the body being the external reality that the soul is expressed in. So we can compare those two systems. The Kamoish b'koiches and nefesh, just like with the faculties of our soul. Haschalas metzias hakoiches, hi kamoishem klulim b'nefesh, sheshamhem kulim b'ashvar. The very first level, the very first appearance of the powers of our soul, of our various faculties. Where do they start? They start in the soul as they are undifferentiated, indistinguishable, there's just soul. This soul later will translate into various powers and faculties of intellect and emotion and doing and speaking and all the various things that we do. That will come later, but in the soul, where they start, all those faculties start as equal, undifferentiated soul energy. But then later in the process, those powers become expressed in a revealed way by enclothing in the body and its various limbs and the faculties in the various parts of the body. And then they're divided up. Then they're distinct. The power of seeing, the power of hearing, the power of thinking, the power of feeling. They're distinct in the body. In the source, they're all one and undifferentiated. Down in the body, they are distinct and divided. And within the powers, the revealed powers, there are various different ways that this can be expressed. There is the way that the faculties in our body are revealed in an orderly fashion, and that's when we're awake. We have our faculties and they're all doing their thing in their specific roles. That's when we're awake. And then when our faculties are hidden, they're not functioning within the body from the body's perspective, that's when we're asleep. You could even be in a state of faint, where you've collapsed, fainted, lost consciousness altogether. That's even deeper than sleep. So the person's still alive, but the functioning of the soul has completely departed from the body. Just the minimal survival level is there, and that's it. So there's our soul as it is full of its powers and functions, but they're all one with the soul. Then there's the soul as it's expressed itself in the body. But even then, it could be expressing openly in the body, or it could be that the body is actually alive, but not receiving the functions in the various limbs when we're asleep, or even when we're fainted. Al derech ze gam l'mayla, so too above in Hashem's interaction with the world. Yesh and kol dargas elo, all these levels exist. K'mayim Razal, like our sages say in the Medrash, Ma hanashama malas aguf, kach kodesh baruch hu malas ha'olam. Just like the soul fills the body, so Hashem fills the world. So our sages use this metaphor, just like the soul fills the body, so too Hashem fills the world. Not just to tell you that just like there's a spiritual entity and a physical entity. It's saying if you examine the way the soul interacts with the body, you'll understand the way Hashem interacts with the world. That the 10 spheres, Hashem's faculties of energy, of light, of creation, as they begin, where do they begin? They're all included in the infinite light of Hashem, in the Ein Sof. Hashem does not have 10 faculties in Him, God forbid. You can't look at Hashem and saying He's got 10 different powers. Hashem is one. In Him, there is the potential for these 10 faculties which will later be expressed. But there's not 10 bits, not 10 lights, not 10 portions. It's all one in the Ein Sof. There's no division in the Ein Sof, in the infinite light of Hashem. But once Hashem expresses himself in the world of Atzilus, which is already a level of creation, even though Atzilus is still one with Hashem, when we say it's creation, there's nothing else yet in the world of Atzilus. It's just divine light. But there's already the concept of limitation, of division, of definition. The world of Atzilus. What is the world of Atzilus? It's Atzilus means Etzel. It's Hashem's realm. There's just Hashem's light. But once we're talking about Hashem's light, that means some form of revelation, of division, of definition. Hashem has taken on the 10 spheres. What's been created in the world of Atzilus? Godliness. The Tzemach Tzedek uses that term, that elokus, godliness. Is that God or something else? When you say elokus, godliness, is it God or is it something else? So what's godliness?
It's really a definition, isn't it?
On the one hand, godliness is just him being him. But being something, taking on any type of definition, even if that definition is the creator of the universe, but that's a definition. That's already something outside of him. It's in between the two. It's not yet really something else. We're not talking about physicality. We're not even talking about spirituality. We're talking about godliness. But if you're talking about godliness as opposed to just God, there's a something there. So this is what the 10 spheres are. The 10 spheres are elokus. It's not God, but it's godliness. He created a persona, he created a personality, he created abilities. He's got abilities now. Once you're talking about abilities, it's still him, but with some description, so it's not his absolute self. In the Ein Sof, that's above Atzilus, there's just Hashem and nothing else. There's the power for the 10 spheres, but there's not 10 powers. There's not Chesed, Gvura, Chachma, Bina. There's nothing to point at. There's nothing differentiated. There's just Hashem with his potential for whatever will come later. In the world of Atzilus, there's already an emergence of a divine persona. 10 spheres that are distinct. I have Chachma, I have Bina, I have Chesed, I have Gvura. There's nothing outside of Hashem there, but it's also not the Ein Sof, the Etzem, the essence of Hashem. It's Hashem as he's taken on a persona, which you can see is the first step towards creation, towards otherness. So even though the words of the Rabbi, even though Atzilus is the world of Achdus, there's just Hashem there, there's nothing else. But there is definition and division. Hashem's powers of Chachma and Bina are defined and divided. Eser v'lo teisha, eser v'lo echadasar. There's 10 spheres, not 9. 10 spheres, not 11. It's specific. We're getting into specific, into definition, into division now. And in that world, you can see the division and the hierarchy of a sphere of the spheres. Chachma is above Bina, and Chesed is above Gvura. And that's in the world of Atzilus. Certainly, when you go into the worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, these are still spiritual realms. But Bria is already there's some form of creation of otherness. The 10 spheres, as they go down there, it's even more defined. And Yetzirah and Asiyah, they're no longer the world of Achdus. Now there's Malachim in those worlds. There's already a sense of shape, of form. That's even more division. So, this idea, which would be very esoteric and abstract and removed from our reality, the world of Atzilus, like We never really know what we're talking about when we say Atzilus and we say 10 spheres, and like these terms. But now that we've introduced this idea by becoming more familiar with our own soul and how it functions, that there's the soul as it is undifferentiated, just soul. But then it enters the body, and emanating from our soul are faculties, functions, which are different, intellect and emotion. And in the body they express themselves differently. But in the soul it's all one. So with that we can appreciate a little bit what we're talking about when we say Atzilus. That there's Hashem as He is above Atzilus, alone, at one, there's just his indivisible self. But then as He enters into creation, He emanates 10 spheres from His self. That's already a level of creation in a way, but there's nothing else yet. That's the soul as it's heading towards the body and appears in the soul a possibility of faculties. But where do those faculties really divide? In the body itself, when they're being utilized in the body. So, the Rabbi says, the division that there is in the worlds of Biyah, where the spheres divide themselves into different faculties and functions, that translates into division of this world, that this world has different layers and levels. The Beis HaMikdash hu makom achi muvchar sheba'olam, that the Beis HaMikdash is the highest and holiest place in the universe, umemeno oir yotzes l'chol ha'olam, from which light goes to the rest of the world. The world, our world, is like its name implies. The word world means concealment, helam, a place of concealment where divine light is concealed. But the light that there is in the world comes from the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash provides the light for the entire world. The place of concealment, of hiddenness, is given a light through the Beis HaMikdash. Like the concept of ishtalshus of spheres, that just like in the spheres, each sphere receives from the one above it, so too in the worlds, in the physical world, the Beis HaMikdash is the edge, the meeting place between the worlds above and the world below. The physical world where Hashem is concealed and the higher worlds where Hashem is more revealed. The Beis HaMikdash is the bridge between the two. And when the Beis HaMikdash is shining, when a little bit of light is being brought down from above to below into this world, so then the Jewish people, you can see their greatness. When there is a Beis HaMikdash, it's our Beis HaMikdash in our land, and we're the ones who are working in the Beis HaMikdash. So you see the greatness of the Jewish people because we're the source of the light for the entire world. You see the greatness of we who are children of Hashem, or we who are the servants of Hashem. Trusty servants to Hashem, our Master. This is just like a person when you're awake, your soul enters your body, but doesn't enter your entire body equally. Your mind and your brain is where the highest revelation of your soul is, the faculty of intellect. And your feet is the lowest level of revelation. There's a clear hierarchy there. When you're awake, you can see the higher parts of the soul. The brain is the part of our soul that can connect to something beyond, something higher. Our feet can't. So too, when Hashem is revealed in the Beis HaMikdash, so you see the hierarchy of the world, where the Jewish people are the light of the world. We bring down the divine light into the world through the Beis HaMikdash, and that shines through to the rest of the universe. That's like Hashem is awake. The Beis HaMikdash is there. The revelation is clear. We can see who's who. However, in Galus, when we're in Galus, so the light that comes down from above, that goes through the ishtalshus of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, the various worlds, it's like a person where those powers, what happens when a person is asleep? Then opposites come together, there's a whole chaos, the order is completely thrown out the window. And so you can't see the greatness of the Jewish people, you can't see that the light is being brought down by our mitzvahs. You can't see that the world is dependent on Torah and mitzvahs. It doesn't look that way at all. The whole hierarchy is turned upside down. Like a person who's asleep, where logic does not reign supreme, that your mind can mix in with your heart and all the faculties are a big mishmash. So too in the time of Golus, that's how it is. You don't see how Ruchnius and Elikus is dominant and is leading the world, and the Jewish people through Torah and mitzvahs are making it all happen. But you don't see that at all. Because we're in Golus, like a sleeping state. The powers, the divine faculties are all mixed in. You can't see the hierarchy. However, we said that there's another side to sleep. On the one hand, sleep is chaos. Sleep is where there's no hierarchy. But on the other hand, why is it like that? Because when you're asleep, your soul has gone up to its source, which means you're in a higher state. Which must also mean that in Golus, on the one hand, all the faculties are mixed, there's no hierarchy, so the divine light is not coming down through the Beis HaMikdash in a revealed way and through that to the rest of the world. You can't see that the light is coming through the Jewish people to liven the entire world. That's on the one hand. That's the negative side of Golus. But there must be the other side as well, and that is that the faculties are in a higher state in Golus. How does that translate to us? That's the next section, which God willing we'll see next week.